Today we have a ministry spotlight with my good friend Phyllis, and I'm super excited for you to hear from Phyllis. We've known each other for many years, and let's hear her share about the work she is doing in East Asia.
Hi, my name is Phyllis, and I work with the ministry in Colorado Springs. Our vision is to equip young adults in prayer and fasting for revival and missions. We work with students on college campuses, and we have discipleship programs throughout the year, including a ministry school. We also take teams on short-term ministry trips overseas. There is a great need for awakening and a move of God in the nations. Statistics show that only 4% of Gen Z in America have a biblical worldview. 80% of missionaries have left the field since COVID-19. The next generation of laborers must be trained for the completion of the Great Commission. As doors of the gospel are closing in the nations, we believe we must pray to remove the obstacles to the Great Commission. For the past 2.5 years, we have been going to a country in East Asia that is very strategic for missions. On the first trip to this nation, we discovered a 50-year-old prophecy that foretold the future of the nation. Elder Shu, who received the prophecy, was born without ears and couldn't hear. He gave his life to Jesus at a revival 50 years ago, and then he saw a lightning bolt hit his forehead, and he was then able to hear. Elder Shu prophesied that in a time of crisis in this nation, there would be 3 messages that the church needed to hear. First love, consecration and holiness, and intercession. Our team leaders had just preached on the same 3 topics the weekend before. Since then, our team has been to this country 8 times, taking teams to pray and fast for awakening and sharing the Nazarite message of consecration to the Lord. It's about a lifestyle of prayer and fasting to have less of the world and more of God. We have been praying for those like John the Baptist and Samuel the prophet, who were Nazarites that turned their nation to God. Tens of thousands have joined on 21-day fasts for the nation in the past 2 years. In the past year, 10,000 have made Nazarite commitments. The young people are giving themselves to pray and fast for their generation and for their nation. Thousands across Asia are also joining in prayer. We are going back to Asia this summer to pray and fast for 21 days with the youth in the nations we are going to. We are believing for God to raise up Nazarite youth movements all across Asia and for a missions movement that will take the gospel back to Jerusalem. Thanks so much for listening. To stay connected, you can email me to sign up for my newsletters. God bless.
If you'd like to support Phyllis's work or connect with her and be able to pray for her, check out the information in the show notes and we'll get you connected. And now on to today's interview. Our guest today is Sameer Sawaqed. Sameer Sawaqed is a financial strategist and mentor who leads strategic growth initiatives at Freedom Family Office and Wealth Thrive. As host of the More We Know podcast, he's interviewed influential leaders, including the founder of Reebok, former co-CEO of Chipotle, and the mayor of Miami. Previously, Sameer served as vice president of investor relations at Chicago Atlantic, a $1.2 billion alternative investment manager, where he worked closely with RIAs, family offices, and high net worth individuals. His approach centers on asking meaningful questions and deeply understanding client needs to create exceptional experiences. Sameer, welcome to the podcast. Could you share a bit about the work you do at Wealth Thrive and how you got started in this field?
Sure. Yeah. So at Wealth Thrive, we are a coaching and consulting firm, and we work with entrepreneurs across America to help them become rich beyond money. What we believe is the catalyst of that is taxes. So as a tax strategy consulting firm, we lead with helping entrepreneurs reduce their taxable income. Taxes are one of the biggest parts of a balance sheet for any business owner, and they don't even realize it. In our work, think of us as like a specialist, like a doctor. You wouldn't go to a general doctor for a heart problem. You'd probably go to a cardiologist, right? And so our specialty is tax strategy, but that's sort of the catalyst for everything else we do across the board, from financial coaching, budgeting, helping business owners get ready for a sale, not just from a tax perspective, but mentally, physically, even, and get them in a position life after the sale, making sure that they have enough money post-sale, because typically an entrepreneur's typically the majority of entrepreneurs will only sell a business one time in their life. And so it's such a big event, and we coach them through that entire process. And with that, we have our sister business, Freedom Family Office, which is a family office for multi-generational entrepreneurs that, are worth over $10 million, where we manage their wealth as well too.
Okay, awesome. So in that, you're working in wealth building and financial strategy, tax strategy, like you said. How does your faith influence your approach to all of that?
Yeah, I would say faith is the foundation for me. So I grew up in a household where, my father wasn't big into faith, but my mom, being a Christian, really indoctrinated that faith into me early on. So I would go to church, and, it really wasn't just about going to church on Sundays, but really the word of Lord and how much it impacted me early on. And the reason I feel like that's important is because I think it's easy for people in life to get misguided through different times of their life. And so when you have faith as your core foundation in anything, your relationship, your business, you remember what matters most to you. And so, faith reminds me that money is not the mission. It's sort of like the means. And whatever we're doing, I go back to the question of, how does this serve the purpose? Are we always acting in the client's best interest? What are we doing to lead purpose and helping these clients become what I call, and our team calls, rich beyond money? So it's like the foundation. So it's not like everything you're doing is through faith. You're not looking at the Bible and saying, okay, what did Moses say here? What happened here? It's more so when faith is that foundation. And when you have the foundation there, everything else sort of builds upon that faith.
That's good. It's going to make everything else stronger because that's your root, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So when we spoke before, we talked about that concept that you just mentioned of being rich beyond money. So could you expand on what that means to you and to the work that you do?
Yeah. So, one of our founders, Noah, he had this concept about rich beyond money really years ago when, there was a situation we had maybe over 15 years ago where there was a client who sold their business for a lot of money. But in that time of selling their business, they kept coming back and saying, hey, I think we can get a little bit more money for this. Went back, got more money for it. He's like, I want to wait. I want more money for this. And then he went back, came back like 6 months later, got even more money for the sale. And he was like, I kind of want more money. And he's like, no, this is it. Like, there's not much more you could get for this. Like, how much is enough for you? Right. And what was interesting is the client ended up selling their business. They had all this money. They kind of got what they wanted. But after that, they started going through like a bad state of depression. And so when they went through that depression, it became this question of like, look, how much is enough? And so for us, the big thing is about becoming rich beyond money. And what that means is that's where you live a life where peace is greater than pressure and purpose is deeper than your paycheck. And then ultimately within faith, generosity is more fulfilling than accumulation, right? So at some point, there's a certain point in the totem pole where, does $10,000 feel that much different than $12,000? Or does $1 million feel that much different than 1.2 million? Or at the next level of the peak, like, are you going to see that much more fulfillment from like 10 million to 12 million? Like, I don't know. And so for us, true wealth is about wholeness. And it's like knowing you have enough, you're doing enough, you're becoming who God created you to be, but really living a fulfilling life of being rich beyond money. And those pillars are across health, wealth, love, faith, which can move into purpose too for people that might not be into faith, but really the focus is faith. When you have those four, I think that's what helps people become, in my experience, rich beyond money. It's not just about the money you have in your bank account, but it's about how you treat your spouse, what you're building your legacy with your kids, how your faith is in, and what are you doing for communities? How are you impacting the next? Like, are you showing up to church if you are in the church faith, Christian faith, and donating? Are you helping push the mission path forward, or is money to you just about buying nice things? Which ultimately, I think in my experience, I've found that the shiny object syndrome is not as beautiful as people think.
Yeah, you mentioned three kind of things in there. Could you, towards the beginning, can you repeat those three?
So about rich beyond money. So it's like peace is greater than pressure.
There we go.
Purpose is deeper than your paycheck. And generosity, me giving you something, even in this conversation, is more fulfilling than the accumulation that you're getting, like the cash gain.
That's so good because money can't give us peace.
Money can't give you So, and this is where people will get confused. Well, people will say, well, look, money can provide you peace, which I'm like, okay, I see what you're saying. Because if you have to go, God forbid, to the hospital and you have an operation, money can provide you the peace of affording that operation. Or money can provide you the peace of having a roof on your head, or us having these computers to have it. But true peace, like actual peace, is I don't think brings you what you're really seeking, that fulfillment deep down. And I have found that experience across the board with everyone, with people that have had a lot and people that have had, quite honestly, a little.
I feel like lack of money can rob your peace. But, if you're not, like you said, you're going to the hospital and you don't have that. So there is some of that, like on a surface level, but it's not going to be ultimately the thing that's going to meet your needs or going to be able to satisfy you in the long term.
Exactly.
And yet we live in this world where money is part of how the world operates. And that's the world that God has chosen to have us live in. And he didn't say get rid of it. He said manage it.
Yeah, that's where I think there's always a lot of confusion. But, sometimes in Christianity, people can think money is bad. Well, if you look at even Dave Ramsey, when he talks about it, I saw you're a Ramsey certified coach, and Dave talks about it too, that like, he doesn't believe that getting rich is like against the faith, like against religion. It's more so like the after unit effect, which is like, what are you getting rich for? And rich is a very glib term. When I say rich could mean a lot of things. Some of the richest people I know don't make more than $35,000 or $40,000 a year, and they have the richest life that I've seen. Right. So that term, when I say rich, isn't exactly what it, like social media and TikTok makes it sound. But again, to your point, it's about knowing you have enough, that you're doing enough, and you're becoming who God created you to be.
Yeah. If you have, one of the things Dave does say is that money, it makes you more of whatever you are. If you're lonely and you have a lot of money, you're more lonely. If you're generous and you have a lot of money, you're outrageously, wonderfully, beautifully generous. If you are grumpy and you have a lot of money, you're going to be rich and grumpy. It just magnifies whatever's already happening in your heart.
I could not agree more with you. Our founder, Noah Rosenfarb, who founded Freedom Family Office, founded Wealth Thrive. When I first heard about his concept initially, before I partnered with him about Rich Beyond Money, I was always like, okay, that's a cool tagline. Makes sense. Like, how can you be rich beyond money? And then until I started diving into the work and finding my purpose and happiness and my pursuit for that through my faith, through my purpose, through my family love, and those 4 pillars that I mentioned earlier, I started seeing, wow, what he's saying, these decades of experience that he has working with the top, the people that have hundreds of millions, and then the people that only have a couple of million, it's like, wow, it changed my entire perspective that life is so much deeper than that paycheck. And there really is something, like to your point there, that however you are deep down, if you have more of the money, it doesn't change anything there, right? Like if you've always been going through life just depressed and dark and sad, having more doesn't change it. Like that story I changed. So he's changed my life with that concept, because that's how I live my entire life now, being rich beyond money. Without him sharing that with me, I don't think I would have had this concept of finding true fulfillment and purpose alongside faith.
And I think we probably both know some of those people that have, like you said, that maybe their income is not a lot. What's in their bank account isn't a lot. They're managing it well, but they're living a wonderful life, and they're living a fulfilled life.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. So on the flip side of that, we see often people get to that point of financial success, but they're struggling with those feelings of emptiness or depression, like you talked about. So why do you think having purpose is so critical alongside the financial wealth?
Yeah. So I think the real reason that happens is because money can fund comfort, right? So this is where we just talked about but the only purpose of that is purpose is what fuels fulfillment. So again, what we talked about earlier is money can provide comfort. So with money, I can go have a meal right now and have no worry. I can go to the store and I can get another new polo shirt, right? There's comfort in that element of getting that for a millisecond. But why people still feel emptiness is because their purpose doesn't fuel that fulfillment. And it's why you see this entrepreneur depression paradox. A lot of times when people sell their business, people are like, wait, they have all this money now. Why are they so depressed? In fact, I just saw the founder of this company. I don't know if you've ever heard of a company called Loom. Have you ever heard of Loom? So the guy sold it for hundreds and hundreds of millions. And he made a post last month and he basically said he doesn't know what to do with his life. He's extremely depressed. Now on the outside, you go, hang on a second. You have all this hundreds of millions. You can go travel the world. You can go do X, Y, Z. But it goes back to that point that money funds your comfort, but only purpose fuels your fulfillment. And so when your bank account grows, but your soul shrinks, you feel it. And I feel like God wired us for impact, not just like income. And so when wealth isn't anchored in the why, it becomes either a distraction or a burden, whereas purpose gives the money a meaning. That's why even at Wealth Thrive, we help clients define what enough looks like. And so that could be financially, spiritually, relationally, and so they can live full not just rich. And that's why a lot of times with clients that are married will bring their wife or husband into the call, their partners, and bring sometimes they figure out what enough looks like for the family and the household.
I do the same thing with my coaching clients of sitting down and looking at, we do a vision and values
Right.
sheet, and what is it that you're trying to reach? Because depending on what it is that you guys want to see for your life, maybe the answer is getting stable so that the wife can be home with the kids. Maybe
Yes.
that for some families, that's what's really important to them. That's going to mean actually less income, and that's okay.
Right.
Then we're how do we get healthy so we can get there? And for somebody else, that has nothing to do with what their goal is going to be, because what the purpose that God's called their family to is different.
Exactly. I love that. What is it you said you do with them?
We do a vision and values worksheet. Yeah. So that when we're doing their, okay, where does your family, and I actually tell them, like, don't start thinking financial. If something financial comes up, put it on there, but don't start there. Just think about, what do we want our family to look like in 3 to 5 years? Or if it's an individual, and, what do you want your life, your career, your relationships? Think about these different areas. And then I also there's a values part where I have some values listed out, and they can circle them or they could write in their own, because that should be the kind of the deal breaker when a financial decision comes up is, well, does this take me closer to the vision? Does it take me further away? Is it in line with my values? And so one family's decision might be different than another, and one family's enough might be different than another, because of whatever purpose and dream that God has given them for their family and for whatever other work that they're doing.
I love that you do that. That's powerful. The worksheet idea, the way you use both terms is that kind of ties in the full picture, right? Without those two, you don't have the foundation. That's really awesome. I love that.
Where are we going? And then what are our guardrails on the way there?
Oh, that's great, Joy. I love that.
So put that in like maybe a couple months ago. And it's been really fun to discover that with my clients as well, going through it the first time and see what, what pops up as really, and for some families, I was doing this with somebody last night, some families, stability is really, really high value for them. And some, that's not so much of a big deal for them, but they really want the freedom and the independence and the flexibility, right? Or for some of them, it's, hey, we want to be able to go on adventures together as a family.
Right.
Or we want to be able to go serve, do this thing. And then those things can guide any of those other decisions we make. So it's been a lot of fun to watch them. Some families have done some kind of vision thing before, but a lot of them haven't.
Right.
And so just to start thinking about, where do we want to be 5 years from now? Other than not broke.
Yeah.
They know that much, but they haven't thought about it outside of the financial piece.
Right. I'll say this, if you're in the audience listening to this, I would take Joy up on that, because given the clientele that we work with, that's something I'm telling people, from people that have sold, that I've seen for hundreds of millions, when you don't have those two avenues that you just talked about, visions and value, you are setting yourself up it's kind of like if I invited you to a dinner, I was having a dinner gathering, and I told you I'm having the gathering, but I didn't tell you the directions on how to get there. Like, you just know that it's happening, but that's about it.
Can you imagine that you climb up to the top of the ladder, up to the top of the building, and you realize you're at the wrong building?
So I'll give another example. So Will Smith, who's big into his faith too, he has this authority and fame. And then somehow I'm listening to him on this podcast last week, and he talked about that none of it has brought him any happiness. And like, he found that the only happiness he found was truly from within and with his faith. Like, that's all he found. It wasn't from any relationship, any movie he's done, any money, nothing. It was like deep down that purpose and like his faith.
That it's because we're wired to need that. And no other person, no other relationship or thing is capable of filling that hole.
Agreed.
Because it's a God-shaped hole.
Right.
There's nothing else that's the right size or the right shape for it, right?
100%.
Yeah. So with that, then my audience is mostly pastors and church leaders, and we have business people in our churches. How can we help our people, especially I'm thinking about those business people, to align their financial goals with that God-given purpose?
Yeah. So I think when I think about aligning finance and business, and again, it feels taboo, right? Because you look at it and you think, well, look, like focusing on money and talking about donations and all this stuff feels taboo. And unfortunately, there's been stuff that we've seen over the last decade or 15 years. There's been stuff that I've seen that's been unfortunate too, from like fraudulent donations and priests getting in trouble. And like, there's been stuff that on the taboo side where I understand why it's such a taboo thing to talk about. Right. But so I think it starts with discipleship and not just like donation. So I think, you know, sometimes in some ways we're teaching without stewardship, right? And so I think what if you're a pastor listening, I think there's nothing wrong with equipping your people with practical tools, right? So like budgeting, debt elimination, investing with integrity, and like and reminding them that in your stewardship and in your teaching that building wealth in itself is not unholy. It's actually a wise thing to do. God is a God of multiplication. And when people understand that their financial health fuels like the spiritual impact, they start to live with intention and generosity follows. Now, again, there is a difference, doing business unethically or illegally or shady or participating in things that are knowingly hurting other people. That's not what God is talking about. That's not integrity.
Right.
But people sitting there and struggling because they didn't learn about budgeting because it sounds unholy that they have this huge credit card bill they didn't even realize about, or buying a home and not getting screwed with the mortgage rates. That's not unholy. I think that's stewardship to learn how to do that. I would have that conversation of understanding that financial health and like the business that you do, which is, I think, amazing and super smart to do, educating people that stewardship, financial building, it's actually like it fuels that spiritual impact.
Yeah, I'm just thinking as you're sharing there about, I've been leading Financial Peace University classes. I'm leading my 16th right now. So I get all kinds of people coming through, some from a faith background, some not, but it's a faith-based course. And when we get to the generosity parts of the course, for a lot of people, that becomes that becomes, oh, that's right. Okay. That's a really exciting reason to get out of debt, is so that I can be able to give more to this thing I'm really passionate about, right?
100%.
So I can be able to support my church more, support missionaries more, or be able to go volunteer my time more because I'm not having to plug every hole, you know. And so I can think of a handful of people, including just a conversation that just came up this last week of, for some people, like that is giving is the most fun we'll have with money. And so having that, oh, wait, I'll be able to do that instead of money being this weird thing that we don't talk about, but instead of we can be something we can get excited about. I've gotten to have a lot of fun with giving since I got out of debt.
Yeah. And I think it's not like an overnight shift, right? It's a different perspective. And I think I would encourage people to understand that perspective shift, even if it feels odd initially, like it's a shift that takes time to get through, and figuring out that giving is receiving, right? And then there's relation that, when you're thinking about faith, gratitude is a big part of it, right?
It is.
And I think gratitude in the education and gratitude, I'm sure when you got out of debt, the number one thing I guarantee you weren't thinking about, especially with your faith, you weren't thinking about like, what am I going to buy now? But it was more sort of like a gratitude, like a peace, like, and you can't do that without God.
Right. Well, and I saw throughout my whole process, I paid off $106,000. It took me about
Nice.
3.5 years living
Congrats.
in Southern California. Math is still math in California. But I tell people it was like, I saw Bible verses literally come to life in that process. If we think about like from Luke about whoever can be trusted with a little can also be trusted with a lot. When I started really taking ownership and learning how to do a budget, what I had multiplied. More doors open to me, better jobs open to me. I had businesses that I did not intend to start that fell into my lap. Literally, somebody started sending me clients before I had a website business. When I was getting out of debt, I sold stuff on eBay, and it was like 5 loaves and 2 fishes because
Wow.
I had just, like a handful of stuff I was decluttering in my house, and I'm going to sell some things because I'm getting out of debt. And people heard that I was selling things and they started giving me stuff to sell. And there was so much that when I finished paying off debt, I moved right after I got out of debt, and eBay was not moving into this house with me.
Right.
That was it. Only getting out of debt side hustle. Like, did not
Yeah.
really enjoy it. But there was so much stuff that wasn't even sold yet. And I did not buy anything to sell in this eBay business. I bought packing tape, and I bought some boxes and bubble wrap, and everything else is either some people gave me things to sell on commission, or they just gave me things that they were going to donate anyways. And I
Right.
had literally, I called it Mount eBay in my house that I had to get rid of when I moved,
That's good.
because it multiplied. I literally watched that 5 loaves and 2 fishes happen in my house.
Like, wow.
in the most eclectic eBay store you have ever seen. They tell you to like be focused. No, I had clothes, I had ham radio equipment,
Right.
I had anything you can
Everything.
imagine, because if people would give it to me, I would sell it.
Right.
I really saw God move over in
Mhm.
those 3.5 years. And I sometimes thought about like, yes, God could have done a miracle and gotten me out of debt faster. And that wouldn't have been the miracle that I needed.
That's so good.
I
Amen to
needed
that.
I needed the growth that happened in that time and the change in my confidence that happened in that season.
Right.
And all the other people that learned about money because I was getting out of debt, so everybody heard about it. And that was just that. But like, it was amazing. And working towards any goal like that, when you're working towards a goal with God,
Mhm.
can be just an incredible, powerful spiritual experience. Like, you don't
Agreed.
think about that part.
Agreed.
So then thinking about kind of some more practical advice. So what practical advice would you give to Christians who want to be able to build wealth while staying aligned with their purpose and with their values?
Yeah. So I think, you know, while you're staying aligned with you, there's regular practical financial advice, where to invest your money and, what type of index fund to get and the comparative of that benchmark. But then there's really like the practical advice that's aligned with the faith. And I would say one of that is like, budget in a way like it's worship, right? And so like
That's
every dollar that you have should reflect the values. And so like every time you're getting your paycheck, or if you're a business owner, uh, budgeting accordingly with that. Kind of like, your faith is not negotiable, right? Like as a Christian, you're not negotiating what days you believe in God and what. So the same thing with budgeting, because budgeting is so important, that should be taken into account the same way. So like, how much are you guys spending when you go out to eat? How much are you budgeting for a vacation? Are you accounting for a vacation as a household once a year? Is it twice a year? Is one of your children graduating soon and you want to do a celebratory vacation? Like, you got to budget, and it's got to be something that takes a really important part of that. So that's one. Another is, it's so interesting because I didn't know that about you paying off your $106,000 debt. That's a huge, I know the challenge of so many people being in debt, and that's a huge accomplishment. So bravo to you, just for starters. It's not easy to pay off debt, especially
not
here in
easy.
California.
That was a
And
beast.
yeah, so for you to do that, bravo to you. And being in California and having to educate yourself, I mean, it makes sense why you have the business you do, because that is not everyone can do that. So I think when I think of this one, this is a tricky one, but I would say for most people, avoiding debt,
Mhm.
right? So it kind of steals, like, when you think of being aligned with your values, your peace and your purpose,
Yes.
people might discount what I'm saying because they'll say, well, if I buy a house, aren't I going to have debt on that house? Like if I buy a house and get like a 30-year mortgage or something, isn't that I owe the bank money? And yes, that's true. But I think when I think about debt, and I think about people taking debt out to buy a car, for example, or people taking debt out to fund, I just saw the statistic, actually, I just talked about it. 60% of people that attended Coachella went on a payment plan for Coachella. 60%. And now, while there was no interest on that payment plan, it still is the same concept of like now you can get payment plans on anything, right? You
I
can go
heard
to,
you can get payment plans on DoorDash now.
yes,
That's
that.
wild.
Yes, you can get payment plans on DoorDash. When I
Don't
think,
do that.
oh yeah, I don't think it makes sense to get like Wingstop and have a 16% APR, right? Two is just avoiding debt. Like it just steals your purpose and your peace. And just don't get that confused with buying your main residence. That's a different type of debt. I'm more so talking about general debt. Like if you really want a Mercedes, but it's going to put you in debt for 50,000, do you really need it? If that's where you're at, it goes back to budgeting like it's worship.
Yeah.
Three is I would say, automate the process of saving money, but also giving. That's going to turn your good intentions into habits. So if every paycheck you get, you're putting money aside for 401k, for a savings account, for an investing account, whatever that might be, and then you're putting some money aside because you give to your particular church, or you give to a foundation that means a lot to you once a year. And giving could be as simple as children's school and giving to the school. It could mean that I will not sit and tell someone how they give, right? It's more for them, but automate the lifestyle of giving and saving. And it doesn't have to be monetary.
Yeah. And
Wow.
even if you're in a place where you want to be able to have some more spontaneous giving, you can plan for that. People don't like, oh, spontaneous means it wasn't planned. But
Yeah.
I've known people that they just set this amount that goes into a separate account that's their spontaneous get. And so when something comes up, if it's in the account, then we can give it.
Yeah, exactly. The other one I would think about, especially in this new generation now, and I'm sure you guys talk about it with your clients, is multiple streams of income. And it doesn't have to be like something because you're trying to earn more. But if you look at even Paul made tents, right? So, I think people that are modern believers can write books, teach, coach, start businesses. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, to have the multiple streams of income. I think you can still align with your values while building incomes, especially as the world advances with AI and technology and such. So I think there's nothing wrong with that. My personal opinion, some people might not agree. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I think there's nothing wrong with multiple streams of income.
I mean, for me also, I think it's kind of fun.
Right.
I've had, sometimes it was because I had to. When I was getting out of debt, I had these side businesses going on because I was trying to get out of debt. For some people, it's just they do some consulting here on the side, or maybe it's kind of a hobby plus, right? It's not their main deal. It's not having to take up all their time. Some people, it's going to be something much more involved.
Right.
That may change depending on the season and with your family too.
Right. Exactly. I agree. And you're a living testament of that. You had to get out of debt. So you had to have other streams of income.
And then some of those things did not follow me into my future.
Right. Exactly. Your eBay didn't follow you.
Right. It did not. And even the websites, I maybe let it go for like a year after I finished getting out of debt. And I'm like, I'm just going to fool with my own and not do anybody else's anymore.
Right.
It freed me up to have time to do things like this.
That's what I also think. One of the 4 that I gave already is giving. Giving doesn't have to be, because you might not have the money to donate $100 or $500. Maybe you're not in a situation where you can afford that right now. But giving could be giving your time. Like you're giving your time right now to go on a podcast to educate pastors. Same way as I'm giving my time to go on the podcast to educate pastors too. So giving can mean so many things. I don't want people to get confused with giving having to be money. But those are the 4. And then, the other 2 I would add is tracking your net worth. But like you can track your net worth. Like you need to track the number, but the measurement of success is aligned with how you feel. So it's good to have it, but don't measure your actual success to stay aligned with your values. I'm like, okay, here's a dollar amount today, that makes me feel happy. Or, hey, it's down today, that makes me feel sad. No, you want to track it because we're talking about financial wealth to build wealth. If you want to build wealth, it's kind of tough to build wealth if you're not tracking, right? If you kind of were paying off your debt and you had no idea what your payments were or how would you have done it?
Well, that's what I did for the first 3 years before I got on a plan that worked.
Yeah.
And I went nowhere, right? I had a budget, but my budget had no bearing on my reality, and I wasn't tracking my transactions. So my numbers hadn't really moved all that much. And then I got sick of it and found a plan that worked. And with the tracking, I think the other piece of that in terms of your net worth, I don't know where you stand on this, but with things right now, I tell people, like, please don't look at your 401k every day.
Yeah.
That's not how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
Don't let the roller coaster steal your joy. You don't get hurt on roller coaster unless you get off while the ride is moving. So yes, check in, but you don't need to be checking every day or every week unless you are in the investment business.
Yes. I completely agree with you. And I think that's why it's important. That's why I said, track your net worth, but your actual success by how aligned you feel. So like your alignment feel. And, that's so true about the 401k. That's why I'm laughing. The last one I would say is talk about money at home and in church.
Yes.
Right. So I think silence breeds shame. There's nothing wrong with talking about it at church and with your people, with your family. I would talk about money in both places. There's nothing taboo about talking about it.
You may have to disrupt some awkward when you start.
Yes.
Our church realized we hadn't been doing a good job talking about money outside of just a little bit in the offering, but not consistently enough. And so maybe like a year and a half ago, we implemented some changes to make it more consistent. So we do a series once a year and we do some things. And at the end of the year, I had some church members like, okay, and we're glad we're moving to this focus next year. Like, well, yeah, we're going to focus on that, but we're never going to stop talking about money.
Exactly.
Because the Bible talks about money.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Even the Bible talks about money.
Right.
But
it was just, they weren't used to that because we hadn't really been doing a great job of talking about it before. And so we kind of had to work through some of those growing pains. And it'll be the same thing with your family, with your kids. If they're not used to it, then it's okay to let it be awkward for a little while.
Completely agree.
Because then you can turn around 6-10 months, few years. I have a brother who's 15 years younger than me, and he doesn't have student loans.
Wow.
because we were talking about it when I was going through this mess, when my sister was going through this mess.
Good.
And nobody had to tell him, don't take out student loans. He just saw us beating through the ugly.
Because you
And
guys
like,
talk. Yeah.
because we were just open about it. And for me personally, on my own, I saw so many people that maybe they didn't do things the way I did. I don't care, but they were somehow motivated or inspired by the fact that I was just transparent with what I was working on over those years.
Yes.
And that sometimes somebody had been working on getting out of debt and had kind of drifted off, but then they saw a Facebook post or they heard a conversation and they're like, oh, you know what? I kind of want to do that again.
Right.
You know? And so
Yeah.
you don't know, and they may never tell you that. Some of them told me years later, but you don't know whose life you're going to change just by being a little bit more open with your process than maybe you were yesterday.
Agreed.
Yeah. So how do you personally maintain balance between pursuing financial success and nurturing those other important areas of your life that you talked about?
Yeah, I think for me, it's always been more about rhythm and not necessarily balance. And look, I don't believe in a perfect equilibrium. I believe in sort of intentionality.
Yeah.
And so just like I schedule time to meet with our clients or prospects or business related conversations, I try to schedule time for other areas too, with my family, with my loved ones. And, making time to look at the four pillars of happiness of health, wealth, success, and purpose being purpose/faith. And so making sure that those pillars, because you can work all day, but not going on walks or taking care of your health, well, then your health dwindles and then you don't have your health. Look at Steve Jobs' last letter that he wrote. He had all the money in the world. So I try to balance my four pillars of health, wealth. It's really health, wealth, love, happiness, and happiness is divided into faith, purpose.
Mhm.
And so I always look at those areas and make sure that I'm optimizing for all four. And, having success without having a soulful life is just one disaster recipe for burnout. So I also try to surround myself with people to keep me accountable, to keep my priorities aligned. And just like a president has cabinet members, you want to have a good team around you. And so that's why when people are hiring you to work with you or people are hiring us to work with them, it's hiring the right team to help you build that infrastructure because you know what you know and you don't know what you don't know, right?
So for you, what are some of the types of people that you have on your team?
So our team is accountants, lawyers, financial planners. I tell people use your money, like hire another accountant or CPA to double check your taxes for the last 3 years. Like hire the lawyer to draft your paperwork before you launch your business and just think that you can do it on your own. And then 3 years later, you're mad about the structure.
Mhm.
Use your money to hire those type of people. And so that's who we have on our team. Nothing wrong with, you might have a great accountant that you've used for 10 years. Nothing wrong with sometimes taking a second look, right? Thing with health and doctors and coaches. And so that's, financially, that's sort of our team. But even me individually as a person, that's having those type of people around.
Yeah, for me, I have a great Christian therapist that I work with.
Right. Therapy.
That's like, and there was a time in my life where that was getting me through a crisis, but now it's more like routine maintenance.
Yes. Yeah.
Making sure you've got spaces to talk through some of those things that you can't talk with other people about. And I love what you said about like you scheduled time on your calendar to do whatever you need for business or this or that. Most of the times when I do that vision and values worksheet with my clients, they'll put family as one of their top values, but have they put family on their calendar
Mm.
other than just, driving the kid to soccer practice, but have they put quality time with family, whatever that looks like in that season on their calendar with the same level of intentionality that you showed up to that meeting at work?
Yes. That's good. That's really good.
As we get ready to wrap up here, where can our listeners connect with you online to learn more about your work with Wealth Thrive and also your podcast?
Yeah. So you can go to wealthrive.com, wealthrive.com. You can follow us on social media. It's just that same thing that I just said at Wealthrive, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, which is Twitter, Facebook. We're everywhere. And then me personally, you can just type in my name, Sameer Sawaqed. I'm everywhere. I'm active on LinkedIn, Instagram, not really so much Facebook, not so much Twitter, but connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram, or, I'm getting involved in other platforms, even on YouTube. And that's where you can find the More We Know podcast. Just type in the More We Know podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, wherever you really listen to podcasts. And that's really more of a podcast focused on mentorship to educate people in different areas. But I'm always happy to have a conversation, provide value in any way I can. And I'm grateful for this conversation with you. It's a really nice niche that you've carved out for podcasts and a really purposeful conversation.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us and to help to, like you said, educate. I love that your podcast is what the more we know. And for us as pastors and leaders, the more we know, the better we can serve our people. So
Yes, that's why I say the more we know, the more we grow.
I love it. Awesome. I'm hungry to grow. So,
Yes.
well, thank you so much for your time here today. And I'll look forward to seeing more of what you guys put together.